Hello, and welcome back to Hoi 4, Equestria War, Polar Bear Communities, under Paul Wellington. And in today's episode, we will go down the path that we are meant to go down for us. Subjugation of Clan Khan. Clan Khan of Onulatur might be comprised of proud and great warriors, each one perhaps being one to match. Any two or even three belonging to other clans, yet we made them kneel once, and we can do it again. Yes, we can. An army overwhelmed. It was an outcome the warlords of Clan Skyfling, and especially Paul Wellington, would not have expected. Instead of waiting for an onslaught from superior numbers, Clan Khan has chosen to raise their forces and strike first, and yet the two armies met on a frozen field. Perhaps had the armies of Clan Skyfling been led by any other elder, they would have most likely lost if they tried to fight Clan Khan in anything approaching a traditional manner. They were the more numerous force, of course, nearly outnumbering our enemy 3-1. It was understandable a single minor clan could not raise enough troops to match a greater clan. Yet, as always, the Ursanes of Onulatur were more than large and strong enough that had they cut through the distance, the lines would have shattered, and victory would be theirs. It was an ancient strategy, simple, and for the longest time, difficult to counter, even if Khan lacked heavy support. However, such a tactic required ground that could be charged through, and thus in what was a rather dishonorable and sordid action, the land between the armies was bombarded by artillery and explosives, making the ground simply impossible to charge through, trapping them in a defensive position, which was charged by the more numerous Skyfling forces. Yet had Paul Wellington not subdued a grand elder ace of Clan Khan and forced her surrender in the middle of the brawl into which the battle had developed, the victory would have been bloody and potentially not even belong to Clan Skyfling. However, even in defeat, Khan refused to put down their axes and bow, for they claimed Paul Wellington fought them without honor and showed the same disrespect for tradition he had shown before in countless other situations. It seemed as if Khan would only break if true bloodbath ensued, yet it didn't take that, for instead of ordering another assault, Paul Wellington merely invited Clan Khan elders to a weapon demonstration. Whatever the weapon was shown to them, the demonstration ended with a tyrant subject agreement, though this time both sides were truly chained with duties. This time, let's not forget, duty binds us too. Subjugation of Clan Gotlung. Clan Gotlung might think themselves unreachable beyond their great walls once again. Their fortresses are rising higher than before. They had done the same last time we marched across the north, uniting bears under a single banner. It didn't help them then, and it won't help them now. The gates breached. The walls were larger than before, more prepared. Not just ice this time, but stone and even steel. Clan Gotlung hadn't forgotten their humiliation, and they had prepared. Paul Wellington gazed at the fortress, seemingly built to stop another Skyfling march against the closest thing Clan Gotlung had to a capital. When Gotlung surrendered and laid down their axes, they would perhaps need some education on truly modern fortification building. Their new fortress was impressive, to say the absolute least, something that Paul Wellington couldn't deny, even while he and his best Posserjort were tearing through the corridors and halls within the allegedly imperial fort. Yet, it was built for heavily outdated ways of war, not accounting for modern artillery and explosives, which, just like the first time, punched holes through the great walls. And yet still, despite being outnumbered and their walls broken through, Gotlung fought tooth and nail, often literally, for every corridor and anything resembling a defensible position. Of course, eventually, the Elder Council and their troops stepped down, surrendering against the superior forces and abilities of the despot, whose chains they thought they had thrown away. However, this time Paul Wellington had promised, in front of every bear of Clan Gotlung and Clan Skyfling, that this time the traditions and autonomy of Gotlung would be respected, so that a war like this would not repeat. Who would we be without those beneath us? Subjugation of Clan Rozerkrats. Clan Rozerkrats have refined their magical crafts, like none among our kind have seen before during these 5 years. However, we know the blessing of the divine is stronger than any magic of a mortal. Even if they think things have changed, they could never defeat the armies blessed by the All-Father. Duel in the sky. Polar bears didn't like living on high mountains. The terrain was dangerous, and the winds and storms could overpower even the greatest of earth signs. The local beasts were similarly dangerous, often being more magical than flesh due to the closeness to the power of northern lights. It was from the top of the tallest mountain on Latur that the shaman lord of Rotzkratz gazed upon the untamed power within the heavens. And it was perhaps with this untamed power that Rotzkratz fought, for there was no other explanation for how they still possessed the force with which they fought at Skybreaker Peak, despite most other fortresses being subdued. For at every other turn and every step of the march to the top of the mountain, they were harassed and engaged by Pazarorp and shamans. By themselves, these small groups would cause no danger in anything resembling proper attacks, and they would engage the advancing skyfling column from the sides, attacking through what had to be some sort of magical coverage of wind and snow, slaying or at least tying up dozens of warriors before seemingly retreating into the mountain itself. Sometimes entire streams of snow and ice would appear, cutting off advancement for tens if not hundreds of bears, who were now forced to dig through as they were engaged by the enemy. The only solitude was in the fact that even in something approaching hit-and-run tactics, Razukrat warriors refused to merely strike and retreat. Instead, they would stay and fight, until they themselves were wounded or felled, or such a fate happened to a Skyfling bear. Though more often than not, it was the Skyfling bears that fell, and yet the column kept advancing higher and higher, Paul Wellington leading from the front, inspiring his increasingly exhausted forces. The Battle of the Peak would be a far smaller engagement than one could expect for an engagement for the future of an entire clan, as barely 100 bears, almost evenly split between the clans, toward each other. Initially, the Shaman clan seemed to be the ones that would come out on top, yet they had no reserves and their troops were tied up on the mountain itself, while Clan Skyfling warriors, if slowly, were seeping into the battle in greater and greater numbers. Eventually, this had become too much, and the Shaman Lord had to lay down his axe and surrender, followed by his clan. The renewal of oaths would have been almost a mirror of the last time, and had indeed been the same. The bitterness of both defeats would perhaps continue to fester, had it not been for the fact that this time the battle was fought and oaths were given under the winter lights. Under the gaze of All-Father, and all that is divine, I swear. The South is ours. Onalatur rests beneath the banner of Skyfling again, just like it did recently. However, now the land of proud warriors and great shamans is truly devoted to our cause, something which we were unable to ensure last time through our foolishness. But now we can be sure that there won't be any more revolts. And there's the Equestrian Civil War again, because of the load. That's, now this is the real time it happens. Now we should be worried. Prepare for the final push. We might have eliminated the threat the lesser clans had posed for us, yet to confront the great clan Vulgar and fearsome clan Swatspels, we will need to prepare as much as possible. We will raise new forces and fortify our new borders in preparation for retribution and a great push. Yeah. Let's see. Sure. The question of Clan Swatspels. Clan Swatspels were our most faithful allies during the first unification. Furthermore, the Elder, the Lord of Storms, Torben, was a good, if distant, friend to Paul Wellington. Yet now we stand opposed. Yep, they're all doing their things. The Lords of Thunder. Clan Swatspels, the Lords of Thunder, as they were known, sometimes by fearful enemies, was a rather unique contradiction, at least if one tried to perceive them through a griffin and perhaps pony lens, for it was one of the most intellectual and scientifically aligned class, at least before the Vulgar started welcoming outcasts back en masse, yet also one of the most warlike and reactionary when it came to advancements. The ritual of induction into the ranks of its Panzerjorp and leadership was the most brutal, as it included not just slaying beasts or winning a trial by combat, but as a proof of strength one was supposed to be struck by lightning and endure. Yet simultaneously, the same induction ceremony questioned the would-be warriors' or leaders' knowledge of bear history, tradition, and what amounted to traditional science and crafts. Clan Swatzpels was also heavily opposed to many ideas on change and advancements, suggesting by the younger generations, being the main source of bears cast out of the frozen north. Yet when the prospectus of such change had proven their worth in combat, they would willingly and happily follow the changes. Such was the case when Paul Wellington managed to earn their friendship through a duel by defeating their leader, the great Thunder Lord Torben. After this, Clan Swatzpel even assisted us in the unification of polar bears' lands. Their support continued, even through the most controversial and, in retrospect, absurd decisions, and yet now they stand against us. It is not for reasons one would think. For Clan Swatzpels and Torben turned against us not because they believed that we had broken our duties or committed some great sins. It seemed that for one reason or another, Torben and his entire clan believes these actions were not of Paul Wellington and his clan. Rather, it's either changed in conspiracy or spreading lies of misinformation and shattered bear unity and causing conflict. In fact, they are so adamant in the belief that any bear that even wishes to approach a member of the clan is forced to engage in a duel. It's widely believed that even if changelings are able to masquerade as something compared to our size, such form is not possible to maintain in combat. That might be quite the issue. Let's start promoting them. Make the Lords of Thunder kneel again. While the belief of Clan Swatzpels that our mistake are nothing more than some foreign-inspired conspiracy is strange, it is also reassuring, as it means if we prove we are true bears, that will most likely align with us again. However, for Swatzpels and Torben, the only way to prove such a thing would be through war. Alright, let's go. It's make friendship through war. That's how you do it. Apparently. Battle of Ice. Despite all the conflict and war that it took to get to this point, the engagements with Clan Swatzpels were perhaps the most worrying of the campaigns that Paul Wellington had to plan for. After all, it was the only clan which wasn't subjugated through war. Rather, their allegiance in the Bear Unification Wars were changed through but half a dozen duels as Paul Wellington fought and defeated Torben, and the best Pendulorn of the clan. Yet such a strategy wouldn't be accepted now. After all, anything that wasn't a traditional battle could easily be perceived as trickery, or actions of a collaborator, and the Skyfling would have to fight far more skilled and physically capable Swatzpels warriors with nothing more than mere axes. The Skyfling warbands easily outnumbered their Swatzpels counterparts. However, as the battle continued unfolding, it was clear that numbers didn't matter in a battle like this. Only when Paul Wellington and Torben met in the middle of the great engagement, and the Thunder Lord was defeated by the Despot, did the battle turn to the side of the Skyfling, and it was a less an actual turn and more Torben rising to his feet with a great jolly laugh and screaming out the words of surrender, as the entirety of the engagement and this duel was apparently good enough. The battle was followed by a great feast, as the ties of friendship and allegiance were reforged through exchange of foods and alcohol. Torben was, of course, overjoyed that Clan Skyfling and Paul Wellington had survived what he claimed must have been a changeling infiltration and spread of lies about the idea of Paul Wellington, and accepted back the Mechanites, and perhaps even worse scum. And then, of course, with the two clans together again, something like this would not happen again. Let's just not tell them our initial ideas. I mean, hey, it works out, you know? I'm glad to have you back on my side. Even the great northern shores now bend to the will of Paul Wellington and Clan Skyfling. Truly, if we can yet again reach our claw across the unbearable domain, our future should be blessed by the frost and spirits of our ancestors. The Manhattan explosion. How are things going down there, huh? Seems like things are going meh at the moment for you. Question of Clan Volsker. The Clan Volsker is perhaps quite the anomaly within the polar bear territories. They used to be a rival of our former comrades in Swatzpels, which meant that during the previous unification they lost extremely brutally. This forced them to accept many outcasts, which changed them, transformed them even. It is difficult to even think of what would be the best way to deal with them now. The Harmonist in the Mountain. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Why not? Clan Vulgar were often historically seen, if the stories of the oldest among the ranks of polar bears and passed down legends were to be believed, as a distant, strange, and even disgraceful and dishonorable clan. This was no small part due to the fact that the clan didn't have tradition of armored warriors, and they seem to have never used the traditional large axes to the weapons that any proper polar bear warrior would carry as their primary armament until the last few decades. Rather, the greatest warriors were called Nanuks, hunters that preyed on the magical beasts that filled the mountain ranges. Furthermore, instead of dwelling within the fortresses of stone and ice forged in the unforgivable waste, Vulgar would hide within the depths of the mountains, as if surrendering to the elements in a manner more fitting for diamond dogs than any proper ursines. Yet there were two reasons why, despite all the rumors and behavior, no one dared to challenge Vulgar's right to exist. Firstly, despite not using the traditional polar bear weapons, the clan possessed several entire halls of star steel armor and weapons within their unbreakable mountain home. Secondly, Clan Vulgar had a long history of both friendship and ritualized wars with the Yak clans, south of the Urson lands, as yaks were one of the few species which polar bears respected and thought as close to themselves in spirit. A friendship with their clans were a clear indication of being a proper bears to many. Only the history-obsessed clan Swatspils denied such notions, as waged many a war against Vulgar, though mostly without any success. That changed the first bear unification, as alliance with Skyfling and the Swatspels brutalized the clan, and some even grew to believe that this would lead to its extinction. Yet it endured, by using a method which others would consider too much, accepting back countless exiles without having to withstand a trial by combat. Even their current leader, the so-called Princess Era, was a former exile who during her exile traveled through Equestria and copied many of their ways. This has put both her and Clan Vulgar in opposition to us politically, before even if they never showed it in the open, and mostly seemed to ignore us, and now they march against us in war again. Why would one want to copy equestrian weakness? Very true, very, very true. That's just dumb. A tip negotiation with the harmonists of Vulgar. Under their new Princess Era, Clan Vulgar has redefined itself in an imitation of equestrian rule. Perhaps the sort of equestrian pacifism and desire to forgive has translated too. Maybe they would be willing to talk this out. Smart. Know thy enemy. Very smart. Very smart. Know thy friend and thy enemy. Honestly, I'm tempted to give them a volunteer, though I can only send one, so it's honestly probably not even helpful enough to try to do. Actually, I mean, my unit, these guys are amazing. We are strong, we are powerful, we'll probably make effect, but they don't deserve it. Sure, they're, I don't want them to take control, but they don't deserve our support either, so whatever. Now, last time it was Solar Empire, not, Lunar Empire, but I'm still worried about Lunar Empire as well, so. Paul Wellington has had many terrifying and horror-inducing meetings through the history as an outcast, and later as a mercenary. In fact, one of the reasons of why he wanted to return so badly, beyond, of course, a desire to see bears prosper, was an ever-growing disillusion with the mercenary existence. Yet, compared to all the meetings with the strange Vididian cults and corrupt nobles, arrogant would-be warlords and bandits within what once they said was a duchy, yet now was under Alexander Krymsky, and even working for the Talons and the Griffin colonies. This was the strangest. It wasn't intimidating or conventionally scary, Rather the opposite. Instead of acting like mad beasts trying to threaten or scare him, or even openly mock him and call him nothing more than a beast, Clan Volgar was nice, absurdly nice even. The meeting occurred in a room within one of the fortresses of the clan, furnished as if it was a minor palace within Equestria. Paul Wellington could only assume the Volgar bears actually apologized that their princess was being late. Furthermore, they had offered various refreshments and nourishments, and such atmosphere was definitely far more terrifying than any attempt at threats by weaker creatures that he experienced. For what sort of figure was this Era, that she whipped a clan of mountain monster hunters into such submission? I mean, it wasn't whipping that got them that way, but yeah. Era of Clan Volgar was a rather strange figure. She was dressed in gold and red, with a substantial amount of jewelry and embroidery, something which any proper bear would associate with weakness. After all, gold was a metal from which no weapons could be made, and most fabrics were too weak to protect a warrior from enemy blows. Yet the Princess of Clan Volgar was most definitely not weak physically, being as large as Paul Wellington himself. Furthermore, while she seemed to attempt to appear nice and welcoming, there was still frost and steel behind that facade. The negotiations themselves were similar, very fluffy and nice looking from an outside perspective as Paul Wellington attempted to create a similar mask. Out of how misaligned the ideologies of the clans were, especially at the current point in time, reaching consensus was difficult, and an agreement was reached, even if it was overwhelmingly vague and included countless various exceptions or situational duties and obligations, as both former exiles tried to outmaneuver each other and ensure the best situation, no matter what happened after. One thing was for sure, however, even if it went the worst way after this, Clan Skyfling would still be the leader, and Volgar the subordinate. At least there's that. Hey, we actually get manpower for once. That's the first time we got that. Woo. The mountains that separate our lands from the Axe are said to be impossible to break through and fight in. Yet in our advance against Volgar, we have subjugated these great mountains too. Yeah, we strong. We strong. And we've gotten rid of that bad effect, so that's nice. A Skyfling victory. Yet again, for the second time in less than a decade, Clan Skyfling under Paul Wellington stands as the undisputed leaders of the polar bear race, and this time our domain is unquestionable. Oh, yeah, let's go and, with the clans united by fair means or foul, we can now roll out a comprehensive education reform system across the north. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, let's deal with that, that slight bit of, illiteracy. Why not? So, this is the Great Over-Tyrant, which, I wasn't in the mood for. This is the Despot, with the soft paw, where you're kinda, you went with the more authoritarian guy, but you're also not evil, either. You're kinda just, well, you're not evil in the left path either, I don't think, but you're more like, you're the nicest you can be as this guy. Like, you're actually fairly chill, overall. We're going with the middle ground path. Well, we're just gonna coronate, become a king. We are going to do some, some stuff with the harmless. We're gonna build up economy, we're gonna build up a military. We're gonna, we're gonna fight some people, though. We're in the middle. Sometimes you have to find the middle ground path, A change of pace. During all of bear history and most attempts to unify, the entire polar bear race was merely an attempt to spread the culture, beliefs, and tradition of one clan onto others, or even the ambitions of singular warlords onto entire species, often by brutal force. Most of the time, such attempts just lead to collapse. We can't afford such collapse again. Learning from Grover and Celestia. It was a great question that bothered many bears that Paul had met in his travel and after returning. It was echoed by several of the Diamond Dogs wandering in North Cloudberry, Yak Bandits in Nova Graphonia, and even that one dragon in Vedina. Why precisely in the world of great beasts and sapient monsters were the comparatively puny griffins, ponies, changelings, and even zebras such dominant breeds? They were small and weak and frail. Their numbers alone could not compensate for all this. Even their magics, beyond select unicorns or zebra alchemists, was pathetic in comparison to the reshaping of entire regions that all the prodigious-sized races could do. Yet as he wandered and fought and gathered power and knowledge, Paul found the answer. It was the great divine or pseudo-divine rulers that these weak races found their strength. It was almost always these great leaders of absurd size and strength that would unite these realms and expand them into empires like none had ever seen before. Celestia and Grover among them have grown most infamous, for entire continents were defined by their power and, importantly, great longevity and legacy. Dragons, bears, yaks, none of them truly had such. Perhaps Lord Torch could compare, but among elders of his breed, he seemed to be more of a nuisance than some supreme eternal lord. And that perhaps was the answer. Paul had always united the bears, not one, or already united the bears, not once but twice, and stood at the precipice of great things as all fathers champion. Perhaps true greatness of bears, he needed to go beyond, one step forward in eternal greatness. Reforge the clan system. Previously as dependent as he was on it, Paul Wellington saw the bear separation into clans as something to be fought, to be destroyed if the Earthsign realm was to be brought into modernity. And yet both his own successes and those of his opponents came precisely from tapping into their clans. True. Very true. But I think for now, this is actually a good time to go ahead and end this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.